Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. Mishnah Yomi continues in the third parak of Maaser Sheni. We're in the 8th Mishnah. Now, yesterday we talked about cases of trees that are part in Yerushalayim, part outside, and structures like rooms that are partially in, partially out. Now, Mishnah Ches deals with a similar concept in the temple courtyard itself. Halishkayot. A lishka, as we will see in Masechet Midot, is like an office, like a room inside the temple complex. And many of these lishkaot, these offices, were built inside the wall, the outer wall around the azara, around the courtyard of the temple. Now, the openings could be perhaps inwards or outwards. So the Mishnah discusses such a case. Lishkayot benuyot bekodesh. If they're built, the airspace itself of the room is in the kodesh, within the temple compound. Upetuchot lechol, but the opening, the doorway, opens to the outside the temple. Tochan chol, v'gagotechan kodesh. The airspace inside the room itself is chol, because it opens to the outside, opens to the chol, to the non-sacred area, but the top, the roof of it, is kodesh. Lamaisa, it's probably built into the wall of the temple. Benuyot b'chol betuchot lekodesh, if it's built outside the temple structure itself, but it opens to the temple courtyard, tochan kodesh v'gagotechan chol. The room itself is kodesh. After all, it opens to the temple, so the kedusha sort of expands into there. But the roof is chol, because lamaisa, the building is built outside the temple. Benuyot b'kodesh uvachol. So what if it's built in both? Upetuchot lekodesh v'chol, and it also has doorways to both sides. So this is really interesting. So tochan v'gagotechan, both the inside airspace of the room and the roof of the room, it depends what the matzav is. Keneged kodesh, villa kodesh, kodesh. So from the sacred area and towards the sacred area, sort of that halfway mark, or wherever the cutoff line is, the outer edge of the wall of the temple, the makom where they were mekadesh. David the Melech was mekadesh the Ritzpah, the Gemara says. David the Melech laid out the lines, did the engineering and the planning for it, and then Shlomo Melech built it. So where they were mekadesh, the floor, basically the airspace, so up till that point, and inwards, that's kodesh. Mikneda chol lechol is chol. And from the outside and outwards is non-sacred, is chol. And that's, you're going to find the doorway that opens outwards there. There was actually a chamber like this in the temple that we've learned about in Kodshim. They discussed that the Kohanim would go there and warm up. It was called the Beit HaMoked. The Beis HaMoked, Rabbosai, was half Kodesh, half Chol. And what they did was they had markers inside the room itself for the cutoff points. Now, the issue was sometimes Kohanim would get Tameh. It was a temporary Tuma, and they didn't, they were still the Kohanim who were on duty that week, but they were Tameh temporarily, so they would go to the sort of the outside of this Beis HaMoked room. Okay, Shkoyach Rabosai, moving on to Tes. Maaser Sheni shenichnas l'Yerushalayim v'nitma. So Maaser Sheni, produce that came into Yerushalayim and then Nebuch became Tameh. It can't be consumed as Maaser Sheni when it's Tameh. The Mishnah says, Bein shenitma ba'avatuma, bein shenitma b'vladatuma. So this is interesting because usually in avatuma we say is something like a dead body or a sheretz, zava, something that is intrinsically tameh, and typically a vladatuma is like a sheni, a shlishi, a revi. We've heard these terms, something that touches an avatuma or touches, then a sheni touches a shlishi, makes a shlishi, and depending on the level of kedusha and tahara required, could even be a revi, could even be puzzled by paraduma. So typically that's how vladatuma is used, but here the Bartner points out we're talking about a tuma derabanan. When it says avatuma, that's a tuma deraisa, and vladatuma in this context is a tuma derabanan. He gives an example, kigon shenoga bekelim shnibim mashkin. Sometimes a tame liquid on the outside of a kli wouldn't be tame derabanan. Would not be tame deraisa, but derabanan, they made it tame for certain reasons we'll get into when we talk about tumas kelim, Rabosai. It's a whole complex inyan about why they made such a gezerah. But back to Maaser Sheni. Bein bifnim bein bechutz. Whether this produce became tameh inside or outside, Beit Shammai Omrim, Beit Shammai says, Yepodeh ve'achel kol bifnim. So this Maaser Sheni produce should be redeemed, even though we normally do not redeem produce once it's inside Yerushalayim. Once it's in Yerushalayim, chomot kolzot, and we can't redeem it. But here it's got tame, so you cannot eat it as Maaser Sheni because it's contaminated. So you would redeem it onto coins. You'd then spend those coins on tahor Maaser Sheni, and this food becomes chulin since it's been redeemed onto money and can be eaten as tame chulin by tame people probably. Chutz me'shenitma ba'avatuma b'chutz. He says, except for something that touched really an avatuma, tuma deraisa, outside of Yerushalayim. In that case, you could take it out of Yerushalayim and redeem it outside and eat it outside, then bring in your Maaser Sheni money. Bill says, all of this Maaser Sheni that's contaminated can be redeemed and eaten outside. It can be taken outside again. Chutz me'shenitma bevlodatuma bifnim. Except for something that got a rabbinical tuma inside. Because in that case, really, deraisa, on a biblical level, it's still tahor. It's a gezerah derabanan. It's an important gezerah, but it's only a derabanan that it's tameh. So since on a deraisa level it's still tahor, we don't want him to take it outside of Yerushalayim because we do not take Maaser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim. So he should redeem it where it is and then buy new tahor Maaser Sheni. Shkoyach HaBoza.